Hey friends, it's Sarah, and today we have a part 2 to a video that I made at the beginning of the year. So in January 2022, I made a video where I talked about my most anticipated releases for the first 6 months of the year, and it's now the 6th month, we're in June, and I want to talk about my most anticipated releases for the next 6 months, so until December 2022. Alright, so I'm going to talk about these books in order of release date, and I have 13 of them, lucky number 13, so let's just dive right in. So the first book I have is Luck and Last Resorts by Grunder Ruiz, and this comes out August 9th. It's an adult romance, and it's actually a sequel to a book that I read last year, the end of last year. I had got an ARC for it in November of last year, and I read it and ended up actually buying the physical book, and that is Love, Lists, and Fancy Ships. But the sequel, or it's not quite a sequel, it's more of a companion novel, but it follows the best friend of the main character in the last book. So it follows Nina, who has kind of like an on-again, off-again, will they, won't they, with the chef of the yacht that she works on. And he has decided enough's enough. She's got to, figure out if she's actually in love with him by the end of the yacht season, or he's going to go back to Ireland forever, and that'll be that. So I'm excited about this one. I really enjoyed Nina and Ollie's chemistry in the first book, and I thought it was a really interesting, like, will they, won't they, kind of what's happened in their past, because Grunder Ruiz didn't really talk about it in depth, probably because she was writing this second book. So I'm really intrigued to see what's going to happen with them. I think it'll be a nice, fun romance read, especially for the summer. So my next book is called Babel, or The Necessity of Violence, An Arcane History of the Oxford Translators' Revolution by R.F. Kuang. So this book comes out August 23rd, and this is by the author of the Poppy Wars series, which I have not read, but I've heard is incredible and devastating. So I do want to read it, but I've also been scared of it. This book is a dark academia adult fantasy novel, and it follows our main character, who is Chinese and is studying in Britain to become a silver worker, which is a tool used for translation and basically colonization. He struggles between wanting to become a silver worker and work with this very prestigious magic, but then also it is a tool that has been used against his home country of China by the British Empire. And so he's kind of caught between his individual dreams and then his loyalty to his country and his obvious distaste for colonialism, to say the least. So it sounds really interesting and pretty complex. It sounds like it's got some really interesting themes around colonialism and identity. I've also seen people with the arcs, and they look pretty fat, so it seems a little intimidating as well. But both the covers are gorgeous. The US and the UK editions are amazing. I think I like the UK a little bit better. I just really like those, the font for the title is really pretty. I don't know, which one do you guys prefer? Let me know, because they're both amazing. But up next is The Dragon's Promise by Elizabeth Lim, and this comes out August 30th. This is the sequel to Six Crimson Cranes. It is a YA fantasy, and I don't really want to say anything else about this because it is a sequel, so if you've not read the first one, I don't want to ruin it for you. But it picks up right after the events of the first book, and it's also got amazing cover. All these have amazing covers. I'm such a slut for a pretty cover. The next book on my most anticipated list is Aces Wild by Amanda DeWitt, and this comes out September 6th. So this is a YA contemporary novel about an all-asexual group of online friends who decide to break into a high-stakes gambling club to rescue our main character's mom from some blackmail she's been embroiled in. And it sounds like a really interesting, heist sort of story. I've been really into heist stories. The few that I've read, they're so intriguing to me. Six of Crows was amazing. Love the heist in there, so well thought out. And then Portrait of a Thief kind of let me down, unfortunately, because of the heist aspects. So I'm hoping this is a good heist book. And I also love the ace representation in there. There's not a ton of books with asexual representation, and it always warms my little heart. Up next is the Sunbearer Trials by Aiden Thomas, which is also released September 6th. So Aiden Thomas is the author of Cemetery Boys and Lost in the Neverwoods, and I love both of their previous books, so pretty much anything they publish I will just read. But this is a YA fantasy book that is inspired by Mexican mythology. In this fantasy world, every 10 years, 10 semi-dioses, don't know if that's how you say that word, are selected and have to compete in the Sunbearer Trials. The winner carries light to the temples of the Reino del Sol, and the loser gets sacrificed to Sol to fuel sunstones that protect the people of Reino del Sol for the next 10 years. And our main character, Theo, is a trans boy who is not anticipating being selected for this. He's not really like trained properly for it. He's like, my best friend who's been trained for this their entire life will be selected. And then he gets chosen, so it's kind of Hunger Games-ish, but inspired by Mexican mythology, and it sounds really cool. I'm not sure if it's going to be a series, but I could definitely see it being like a series. The next book I'm really looking forward to is The Atlas Paradox by Olivie Blake, and this comes out October 25th. This is the sequel to The Atlas 6 and is an adult fantasy novel. I also don't really want to say anything about this because The Atlas 6 has a unexpected ending, and so I don't want to spoil it if you haven't read The Atlas 6, but I'm very interested to see where we go with these young adults and the Alexandrian society and all this magic world that Olivie Blake has created, so should be good. The next book, and I think one of the books that I'm most anticipating, is Seasparrow by Kristin Cashore, and this comes out November 1st. So this is part of the Graceling series and is like a direct sequel to Winterkeep, which came out in 2020, I think. And I really love the Graceling series. I read the first one when it came out. Did I read it when it came out? Close to when it came out, I think, over a decade ago. And I just love the world that Kristin Cashore has created. And she wrote Graceling, Fire, and Bitterblue all around the same time, and then almost 10 years later wrote Winterkeep and is now coming out with Seasparrow. And I was a little apprehensive about Winterkeep, I'm not gonna lie. I was like, it's been so long since we've had a book. How could this be as good? But it was. I really loved it, and I'm so excited to see what this next installment brings. It's supposed to follow Hava, who is the spy for Queen Bitterblue, and it seems like the Hava and the like royal entourage, if you will, is on a trip across the sea when they get shipwrecked and end up having to traverse like the northern ice in order to get home. So I'm excited for this cold fantasy because it may be a cliche, but sometimes Canada really is cold, at least where I live. So relatable. Next up, another November 1st release is Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrun. And this is a sapphic adult romance that follows a main character who enters into an agreement to have a marriage of convenience with her landlord in order for him to get his inheritance. And she goes home with him and finds out that his sister is a woman who she had fallen in love with a few Christmases past. So she's kind of caught between her obligation to the brother and this really intense connection she had formed for his sister. And it looks like a really fun holiday rom-com with lots of drama and tension. Alison Cochrun is the author of The Charm Offensive, which I've read and really enjoyed, so I'm excited to see a sapphic romance from her. Up next, the third November 1st release I have here is The Ones We Burn by Rebecca Mix. So this is a YA fantasy book about a witch who is sent to kill a human prince, but ends up teaming up with him and his sister in order to stop a magical plague that is killing other witches. It features a sapphic enemies to lovers romance, and the cover for this is like astonishing. I love it so much. And as soon as the cover was released, I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to get this book. I'm gonna have to read this book, even if it's not quite my normal thing, because I'm not a huge fantasy person. But I was like, oh, the cover, and it's got sapphic characters in it. That's enough for me to be like, I'll give it a try. So it does sound really interesting though. Like the plot sounds very interesting, but that cover really sold me. Next up is a book that I just recently heard about, and that is Even Though I Knew the End by C.L. Polk, and that comes out November 8th. So this is an adult fantasy period piece, kind of. It's kind of like a noir detective period piece, but make it fantasy. So this follows an exiled augur who is offered a chance to grow old with a woman she loves instead of spending eternity in hell, in exchange for tracking down the White City vampire who is a notorious serial killer. So it sounds very intriguing. Once again, amazing covers. Just cover designers are so talented. I don't know how they do it. They're so amazing. Hats off to them. But it sounds really interesting. I don't believe I've read any books that have like that kind of noir detective feel to them. Just kidding, when I was younger I did read the Bunnicula series and that was fun, but it's, you know, a lot less serious than this book would be with the noir detective feel. But I'm really intrigued by it and I want to try it out. It's that kind of like 1920s feel, but not the Roaring 20s. Am I thinking of the right time period? I'm not sure, but I think it's the 20s, maybe the 30s. We're actually gonna Google that. So Wikipedia says noir fiction is from the early 20s to the late 50s. So I wasn't wrong. It's just covers 3 decades. Anyways, up next is Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail by Ashley Herring Blake, and this comes out November 22nd. This is another adult romance companion novel. It is the follow-up to Delilah Green Doesn't Care. It follows Delilah Green's stepsister Astrid, who was having her wedding in Delilah Green's book, but has now broken up with her fiancé and is in the middle of renovating an inn for like an HGTV style show. She's always clashing heads with the lead carpenter for the reno, and it kind of evolves into an enemies to lovers sort of situation. So I am really intrigued by this one because we didn't get Astrid's perspective in Delilah Green. We had Delilah's perspective, and then the love interest Claire was Astrid's childhood best friend. So we saw them and we got to see like their 2 very different perspectives on Astrid. So I'm really intrigued to see Astrid as like the main perspective in this because they had very opposite ideas of who she was. And it was a really interesting read seeing this one character through the eyes of someone who grew up and like wanted her love and attention, and then someone who actually did have her love and attention, and just like the tension between their ideas of who she is as a person. So I'm very looking forward to seeing how Astrid is when we're inside her mind. The penultimate one is A Dash of Salt and Pepper by Kosoko Jackson, and this comes out December 6th. This is another adult romance novel, and I've not read this author's first adult romance, though I do want to, but this one follows Xavier Reynolds, who ends up working as a prep chef, and he kind of gets on the nerves of the owner / like head chef, Logan, who is also a single father. This is a trope that I've realized that I really enjoy, the single parent as the love interest. I don't know why. I don't really enjoy children all that much. Like, I don't want kids myself, but I do love the love interest being a single parent. There's something about them taking care of the child. It's like, oh, they're so sweet and compassionate and generous and kind. I read 3 or 4 different books last year, different romances that the love interest was a single parent, and it was just very sweet every single time. So this is apparently a trope I like, but not in real life. But anyways, this sounds like the 2 main characters kind of like clash heads, but start to fall for each other despite their differences. And it seems like a little bit of a kind of like Grumpy Sunshine thing too. So sounds very cute. I do love romances that take place in like the culinary world. I just think it's so fascinating. I don't know why, but I love a culinary setting. Maybe I watched too much Food Network as a kid. So my second most anticipated book, and the last one for this list, is A Million to One by Adiba Jaigirdar. And this comes out December 13th. So this is a young adult historical fiction novel that is Titanic plus Ocean's 8. So it follows a thief, an artist, an acrobat, and an actress as they team up to steal a jewel-encrusted book on board the Titanic. And it features if not several, sapphic romances. So I have read Adiba's other books, Henna Wars and Honey and Issues Guide to Fake Dating, and I thought both of them were like really cute, slightly younger, like YA books, but I love the Titanic. I love reading books about the Titanic. For whatever reason, It's kind of weird, but it's one of my like strange bookish niches. And to have like a heist on the Titanic where they're stealing a book and it's got sapphic romances, it's just like checking all of my boxes. So I'm really excited about this one. I think I need to like tone down my expectations just a little bit so I don't, you know, overhype myself and then be disappointed by the book. Not that I think I'll be disappointed, but I just don't want to get my hopes up too high and then have like an unattainable bar in my mind. And December is a long time to wait. I do have a pre-order though, so just gotta wait for it to come in. Those are the 13 books that I'm really looking forward to in the next 6 months. I'm sure more books will come out that I'm also pumped about, but these are the ones that are kind of like most on my radar at the moment. I've always find other ones, like as the year goes on, other releases come out and I'm like, ooh, oh my god, buy those. But these are the ones that I'm like keeping an eye out for. I would love to hear what books y'all are looking forward to, and if maybe some of them made it onto my list, or if you're looking forward to other books that I have not yet come across in my scrollings through the bookternet. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you next time. Hello friends, it's Sarah, and didn't think this sentence through. Babel? This is called Sarah's having a breakdown. But my memory is so small, so tiny, so short. She got no memory.